Then let's open the hearing. So good afternoon to all participants in the online public hearing organized by the Independent Evaluation Commission for assessing the integrity of candidates for the position of member in the self-administration bodies of judges and prosecutors pursuant to law number 26/2022. I hereby declare this session open. This hearing involves the resumed evaluation of Mrs. Angela Bostan, candidate for the Superior Council of Magistracy and judge at the Chisinau Court of Appeal. I would like to welcome you, Mrs. Bostan. We are here to conduct an online public hearing in the context of the resumed evaluation process aimed at assessing candidates for the position of the Superior Council of Magistracy. The Commission is acting in accordance with law number 26/2022 and its rules of procedure. And on the screen in front of you, you have the four members of the Commission for this hearing: Victoria Henley, Tatjana Raducanu, Nona Tsoutseria,
Da, scusi.
Yeah, okay. As I said, on the screen in front of you, you have the four members of the Commission for this hearing: Victoria Henley, Tatjana Raducanu, Nona Tsoutseria, and myself, Herman van Hebel, the chair of the Commission. The Commission is furthermore assisted by members of the Secretariat, and the online public hearing can also be followed by representatives of the media and the public. During the hearing, interpretation between Romanian and English will be provided, and to allow for accurate interpretation, I would kindly ask you to speak clearly and slowly. Furthermore, the proceedings are being recorded, and the public parts will be available online generally within 24 hours after the hearing via the website of the Commission, and the address is www.vetting.md. I will start with a brief overview of the procedural background of this resumed evaluation. On 9 December 2022, the Commission issued a decision in relation to your integrity evaluation for the position of member in the Superior Council of Magistracy. In its decision, the Commission decided that it had serious doubts about your compliance with the criterion of financial and ethical integrity in relation to the source of funds for financing your mother's apartment and habitation right, and ethical questions concerning your participation in the General Assembly of Judges. On 9 January 2023, you appealed this decision to the Supreme Court of Justice, and on 1 August 2023, the Supreme Court of Justice annulled the Commission's decision and ordered a re-evaluation. On 7 September 2023, the Commission started the resumed evaluation, and on 1 November of this year, pursuant to Article 19, paragraph 1c of its Rules of Procedure, the Commission sent you a statement of facts and serious doubts. On 8 November, you responded in writing to the statement of facts and serious doubts, and on 20 November, you informed the Commission that you wish to participate in the public hearing. During this hearing, the Commission will take into account your privacy and, where required and possible, the privacy of your family members and close persons. So we will leave out unnecessary details relating to, for example, ID numbers, bank account numbers, addresses of real estate, and the like. For the protection of your own privacy, we ask you to do the same. The present hearing takes place at your request, and the hearing will be focused on the statement of facts and serious doubts that the Commission has sent to you and your written response to the statement of facts. I will briefly explain the procedure for today's hearing. For each issue included in the statement of facts and serious doubts, you will be given, if you so wish, a maximum of 15 minutes to briefly provide additional explanations to complement your written response to the statement of facts and serious doubts that you submitted to the Commission. One or more members of the Commission may have questions for you about the explanations you have provided, both in writing and during the hearing. I urge you to be concise in your explanations and answers, and I also urge you to answer all questions truthfully and completely. Your explanations are important to the Commission in verifying your financial and ethical integrity. I would now like to hand over to Tatiana Raducanu to lead the discussion with you on the statement of facts and serious doubts. Tatiana, you have the floor.
Hello, Madam Bostan, with respect to issue number 1. Can you hear me well? The Commission has serious doubts about your financial integrity in relation to an apartment in Chisinau that was purchased in the name of your mother, including doubts about the source of funds used to purchase the apartment, the accuracy of your statements during the initial and resumed evaluation about those sources of funds, specifically your statements about the contributions of various relatives and about your mother's income from her patent-based activity. In light of your declared habitation right in this apartment since 2020 and the frequency of your bank transactions in the neighborhood of the apartment, the Commission has serious doubts about whether you or your mother is the de facto owner of this property. If you so wish, please briefly provide additional explanations to complement your written response to the statement of facts and serious doubts that you submitted to the Commission, please. Thank you. Sorry, I can't hear the lady. Scuze, vă auzim foarte rău, traducători aici. Dacă colegii noștri ar putea... Așa e mai bine, cred că... Încercați acum, vă rog.
Acum mai bine?
Un pic mai bine. Așa. Sorry, I asked her to change. Once more, I would like to reiterate the statements I made before during the hearing to the honored Commission that with respect to the true owner of that apartment and conditions and my right of habitation regarding that apartment. The conditions under which I acquired or I entered into this right of habitation in the apartment. Once more, I would like to reiterate that this apartment is the property of my mother, who had a joint household with my brother, with her son, Bostan Alexandru, who is working in Italy since around 2005-2006. Over the latest period of time, he became single, and because he divorced previously his wife, and he wanted to rebuild his personal life, to build a new family, he decided that it would be the case to contribute with my mother's financial support and her sister for my mother to be able to move into a separate apartment or housing where she would have the necessary conditions, given that she, in 2017, had a trauma, and for 2 years she had very limited mobility. Moreover, this idea of my mother to purchase an apartment or to invest the money that she managed to acquire during her life, to invest that in an apartment. She wanted to invest that in a housing that would ensure for her more or less comfortable living for her during the later years of her life, because in the rural... So I was saying that my mother, over the last years, intended to revise the financial resources she has gathered in order to improve and have a separate housing from her son in more adequate conditions, because in that community where she was living with my brother, the conditions are less favorable, so to say, for an elderly person to survive on their own, meaning there was no connection to the gas supply network. It's not fully connected to the water supply network. It's quite complicated to move around, especially it was quite complicated for her, especially after that trauma that she suffered. What my mother, together with my brother, realized were the financial resources gathered by my brother from his work abroad, so from also resources that my mother gathered because she has worked all her life, including after retirement, for more than 10 years. She has worked for more than 10 years, and it was quite a hard work on the market of village Carpineni. Moreover, having around 2.5 hectares of arable land and land nearby her house, she had quite a serious household that brought her certain income, meaning that she either sold some of the harvest, or she was growing birds or animal that she was poultry or animals that she was selling, until a certain moment when she suffered the trauma and she understood she would not be able to handle everything on her own. So at that time, this decision was made quite quickly and quite concretely in order to be able to make sure that our mother, this decision included me in terms of my consent that when it's going to be necessary, I will ensure supervision of my mother as long as necessary, especially since I was working in Chisinau, where I still work, and it was my, well, having the obligation to contribute to supporting my mother, I accepted to do that as long as my brother was abroad and my mother's sister was in Russia, and there was no one else by her side but me. In these circumstances, I accepted that when necessary, I will be by my mother's side. I will contribute to the extent possible, which I did starting in 2019, 2020, and even until nowadays, until recently, because this year my brother came back from abroad, intending to settle down in the Republic of Moldova, but for certain reasons he saw that he does not have that much of a possibility to fulfill his priorities. That's why he went back. And even now, I keep supporting my mother to the extent possible. Thank you. Now we have a couple of questions about the entrepreneurial activity of your mother. At the hearing during the initial evaluation, you stated that one of the sources of funds used by your mother to purchase the apartment in Chisinau was savings that she gathered through her entrepreneurial activity at a local market in her village, where she was selling various goods before 2013 based on an entrepreneurial pattern. During the hearings on your appeal at the Supreme Court of Justice, you highlighted that the income generated based on entrepreneurial patents are not subject to taxation, meaning that your mother was not having the obligation to file income tax returns, so she did not file them to the state tax service, and that earnings derived from entrepreneurial patent could range from hundreds to millions of lei, You did not estimate the income earned by your mother from this activity at any of the stage, at any stage during the initial or resumed evaluation. According to Article 18 of Law number 93 on entrepreneurial patents, retail trade was allowed on the basis of an entrepreneur's license by the local authority at stores, counters, and bins, provided that sales revenue of the patent holders would not exceed 300,000 lei in a period of 12 consecutive months. That means that if income obtained for 12 consecutive months is higher than 300,000 lei, the entrepreneur has the obligation to register and carry out their activity under another legal form now of organization, limited liability company or corporation, and so on. During the resumed evaluation, the State Tax Service reported to the Commission that no patent was issued in the name of your mother in the period between 2007 and 2013, and that your mother had no other type of legal entity registered in her name before or after 2012. So the first question, according to the State Tax Service, your mother had no patents issued in her name during 2007 to 2013. Why did you declare to the Commission that she had a patent prior to 2013? I would like to mention that from the information that I received from the State Tax Service, that I personally received, I don't know for what reasons this is not part of the case file materials. If necessary, I will submit that. My mother had a patent first time in 1999. This information was provided by the State Tax Service at my request. I shared it with the lawyer so that he would attach it to the case file materials. It's not here. Now I could not provide this information when I found only this week that it's not there, given the time at work. I could not submit or resume the procedure of obtaining this document this week. So in 1999, I repeat, my mother, according to the data of the State Tax Service, obtained an entrepreneurial patent. For what time, for what time period did she have this patent? For 1 year, for 2 years, for 3 years? The patent is issued for 3 months or 6 months. I don't know for sure. I don't know exactly. I tried to ask my mother to clarify. I don't know for how many times it was extended, because once it is issued, this patent is not renewed. It's extended. And my mother was telling me previously that she extended it several times, but not always doing that regularly according to the law. So this situation that my mother had a sale activity on Carpinian village, I saw it was reflected in a certificate issued by mayoralty of Carpinian village that confirms that she has worked, was selling products there, and the entire community knows that. So when I mentioned that my mother held a patent, I relied on her statements, on what I knew, but obviously I could not supervise the way she fulfilled her duty to extend that patent, not to interrupt that time frame of a patent, because we were not having a joint household and I was not getting that much involved in these things. I did not know that it would happen, that I would have one day to provide evidence to that effect. But again, she had a patent. She started to work based on a patent, and then I don't know how often she was extending it. When it comes to the income to be declared, of course, my mother did not have an income that would have exceeded that amount. I don't know if it was if it was anywhere close to that amount. So I tried to ask her to give details to me, what was her income. Of course, my mother, being 80 years old today and being in a not very good physical condition. She could not provide me those details. But she was telling me that when she was gathering $100 or $200 per month, that was a very, very good month for her. So she was telling me that she always, like the income in lei that she obtained, she was converting it for some safety into this currency, initially into US dollars, then into euros. What she was doing, how she was doing, she's the only one to know. I was never involved into following that income of hers. Did you get an answer to your request to the state tax service? Yes, and it was mentioned there that in 1999 the entrepreneurial patent was issued on my mother's name, because that's what I asked. If there was a patent issued or not. I did not ask whether it was extended and when, for what period of time. If needed, I would like to say that I will try once more to make the request to this body, but again, I maybe can ask the honored commission to help clarify this information so that we could have some clarity about it. And I want to be understood correctly. When I talked about the patent, I did not try to mislead anyone. I knew that my mother started actually in a period that is kind of long ago in the past. She started the business based on a patent. The Commission has information from the state tax service confirming that between 2007 and 2013, your mother did not have a patent. Esteemed Madam Raducanu, that certificate only said 1999. She obtained the patent for the first time, 1999. That is 7, 8 years ago, before the time I'm mentioning. I understood that you covered 15 years period, but it could happen that at that time she was not carrying out that activity that much based on a patent. But when she started it, she had it, and that's why I stated it about the patent. Okay. Since your mother did not have a patent for period between 2007 and 2013, and she did not have any other legal entities registered in her name, what was the basis for her activity as a merchant? I mean, what kind of merchant she was on the local market in her village? To explain that, again, from my mother's explanations and from what was known to me, she was buying some things wholesale at a market in Chisinau, and she was selling only Thursdays and Sundays, 2 days a week, because the market in Carpineni was not an everyday market. 2 days a week, together with another neighbor of hers, they were sewing. So my mother was buying fabric, and they were sewing bed linen. So my mother was telling me that they were selling duvet, bed linen. That was happening mostly on Sundays, but on Thursdays she was selling on the market sometimes when she was gathering this produce, farming products from her household. So if I understand correctly now, she was selling agricultural products and some, yes, other industrial goods. Where did she bring them from? Chisinau? She was selling the following thing. She was going to the wholesale market in Chisinau. That's the name of it. It's the name, the Tiraspol market, that's the name, where she was purchasing fabric for some time. And together with her neighbor, Miss Maria Donka, who was a seamstress, they were sewing this bed linen that my mother was selling on the market. Besides that, my mother was buying wholesale certain products there, like some covers, clothing for women, footwear, mostly slippers, that she was selling on the market in Carpentani, especially on Sundays, because that is a large market, the only market for the villages nearby. So it's around 7, 8 communities in the neighborhood. They don't have markets on their own. That's why the market in Carpentani on a Sunday is a quite large market, where she was selling in autumn, in winter, in sun or in freezing time. So she was there on Sundays. The entire community knows about how did she bring them from Chisinau? What kind of transportation did she have? Because that involves expenses.
As far as I know, they were using the itinerary bus. They would use these big bags with the square design. I remember now sometimes she would come home in the evening and she wouldn't travel all the way, for instance, to Carpini. So she would stay overnight with me and she would grab these two big bags full of commodities. So that was very hard work. I am not ashamed of the fact that my mother worked that hard, but I would like to say that an entire community is aware of that, knows about it. As she's worked as a teacher, her pension was quite small. She's worked for an entire life as a kindergarten teacher, as a school teacher then as well. And obviously, when she retired, she still had strength to work. So she obviously still wanted to work towards certain priorities that she had, and she just continued working. So just in the way as many other people continue to work when they have certain objectives and priorities that they want to work for. Another question, please explain what exactly you meant by the statement the earnings derived from the entrepreneurial patent could range from hundreds to millions. But I didn't say that. And how this assertion is related to the income earned by your mother from her work, and also considering Article 18 of the law number 3093, sorry, according to which sales revenues of patent holders may not exceed 300,000 a day. Well, I apologize profusely. I did not say that the income could amount to millions. I don't remember ever saying that. I would like to say when I ever said that. I am very sorry to say this. I might have been misunderstood, but if I ever made such a statement, I would like to see it myself. Did I ever say that? As in hundreds of millions? I don't think so, not in any way. Maybe tens of thousands delay in a year, but then again, I would not to commit myself to making any statements like this. I don't want to be then, so to speak, accused for reducing, decreasing, understating, overstating certain things. I've lived away from my mother since I turned 18. We've lived separately, so I don't know all the details of her accounting, of all the ways of how she was keeping records, but certainly there were no incomes of those of that size. You provided the Commission supporting documentation about the land plots of about 1.8 hectares obtained by your father that should have been inherited by your mother. According to the information from the e-cadastre register, the Commission was not able to identify other land plots other than the one that is 0.04 hectares land that was registered in your mother's name. Could you please clarify what was the total area of the land that your mother used, and in what capacity was she doing that? Well, I mentioned when I've answered the questions, I mentioned that I asked my mother to provide me with the documentation that supported specifically the ownership of the land plot. So I tried to, well, now to be a little bit more succinct, that land plot was attributed to my father as a person who was rehabilitated because of following political reprisals that had to do with the civil restitution to the family of my father because of the fact that their assets had been confiscated during the repression time. So my father received two land plots that was farmland right outside the build-up area of the Carpinian village. The total surface was about 1.8 hectares. Now those land plots, they were and continue to be worked by the family of my mother. However, my father passed away in 1995, and my mother, as per the certificate of legal successor that was issued by the notary Raisa Tudós, she is the only heir of all those assets left after my father passed away, including those two land plots that are to be used for farmland. Well, perhaps because of lack of knowledge, perhaps, or because of lack of time, I am not certain why, but my mother did not register anything, not even the house that she inherited. It is only now that I found out that that is not registered under the name of my mother, not even the house. So there is the household records of the family of my mother, and that sort of a record is with the city hall of with the mayor's office of Karpinen village. So there it says that my mother works and owns those land plots to this day. In addition to these farmland plots that are outside the built-up area of the village, in addition to that, my mother also owns farmland that is right in the vicinity of her house. So I might be a little bit imprecise, but there's about 0.40 hours. And until not long ago, she was working that as well. There was a vineyard planted there. And my mother, over the last year, she's also been selling the crops that she was collecting from the vineyard. As my brother mentioned last year, he was going to return to Moldova to actually work the land as well there to refurbish things a little bit. They had to remove the vineyard plantation. Now their land is available, and there are other different crops growing there. Currently, out of the explanations of my mother, in addition to that land outside of the village, she also has about half a hectare of land that is adjacent to her house, and that land she used to work until not long ago, until her health condition worsened. What about those land plots, those farmland plots? Who is doing what about that land? I understand that it's outside of the built-up area of the village, which means it's not adjacent to the house. It's somewhere at the outskirts. That is correct. They are outside of the built-up area of that settlement. So for as long as my mother was in proper physical condition, there used to be crops growing there, such as corn and sunflower. That's the crops that were growing there. And considering also that when it was necessary to, for instance, to do the different farmland work, like plowing, for instance, she would do that together with other people who had adjacent land plots. My mother told me that they had equipment for agricultural work, so they would plow their own land plots, and they would plow my mother's plots as well, and she would pay for this service. And then they would plant their corn or sunflower. Can you estimate the amount of expenses and the amount of income of your mother on the basis of what came out of of working that land? Well, they can't estimate, but I thought that such a question could arise, and that's why I would like to mention the fact that the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Industry, by order of 8 November 2013, approved the net income for peasant households and for auxiliary households, so income that can be earned from agricultural work in the phytotechnical and zootechnical field, as in livestock and plant, that is, and what can be earned out of this sort of auxiliary households. So this particular normative income was specifically established established for the different parts of our country, north, center, south. And I would like to refer to Annex number 8. So the sort of setting out the net income in agriculture. And for 2020, these auxiliary households, according to the rules established, there was this lei per hectare established as a established norm, so to speak. So for 2020, the earnable income was 11,394 lei, specifically for the center area of our country. But I mean, what about 2012? 2020 is too late in the time, too close to now. But when was the time that your mother was using that land? Up to 2012 or up to what year? I would like to mention that this annex, if I look at it, well, I found the calculation for 2020 only, but actually in every year you can find these calculations because these norms, these rules were approved back in 2013. My mother started to process, to work this land that she had back in the time when my father was still alive. And then she's also been working it since 1995 onwards to this day. But starting with 2017, when my mother practically physically was not in the capacity to take care of those land plots, my brothers took that over, took those tasks over. So they use the services of those other people who own the adjacent land plot, and they do this work, they work on land together. So if I'm not mistaken, back in 2018 or 2019, specifically to be able to work the land, my brother purchased a tractor. He took a loan for that, and that tractor was bought by my brother in order to be able to perform the farming works that were needed for those land plots specifically. To this day, they are not left idle. Now, there's the family Villero that are the farmland neighbors, let's put it like that. Farmland neighbors, they work their land and they also work my mother's land. But these crops and this agricultural produce, everything that is collected by that other family, they withhold a part of the crops to cover up for the expenses incurred for working the land. And what is left is brought to the household of my brother, and then my brother either keeps that or sells that. So what about the core that was being collected that you were saying there were other crops as well? So where was the sunflower being sold? Was your mother selling that at the market, or there was another way to sell that produce? And on the basis of what was she actually receiving income? My mother cultivates, even this year when my brother was here, no, not cultivates, but they grow livestock like poultry and pigs. And the poultry, the birds, the poultry would be sold at the livestock produce, like we put it like that, the meat, they would sell it at the market. So that's what they were also, how they were also earning. So they were selling that produce at the market. I know for certain that when it came to sunflower or corn, they were not selling that at the market, but they would sell, well, they would well, let me ask you about the brother in Italy. How did he contribute to working that land, or how was that happening? Well, he's been in Italy from 2005 to 2006. While my mother was in good physical strength, that relationship with those people was like, for instance, they would hire 4 or 5 people for plowing the land. But in 2017, when she fell down and she suffered trauma, from that point on, she was not able to be too much engaged with that farmland. But until then, it was my mother, and then my brother would send some money, and as needed, they would use the money, for instance, to pay for the services of some people who were supporting that, who were supporting the services, as in working the land, like plowing, for instance, or people who had the tractors, for instance, to plow the land again, planting, and then there are so many works that one has to do for farmland. I know that there's a particular cycle that has to be observed. I don't know the details of that, but my mother too would do that once in a while when she was in full capacity to do it. Like in the countryside, it is. Like it happens in the countryside. You use everything that you can and you can't to just make it work. And how did your mother make the savings? Like, was it in cash? How was she keeping the money that she was saving away? How would she, what would she do about it? Well, I asked her a couple of times actually, and I knew for certain that the money was being kept at home. Well, certainly there was a situation where in certain cases when she would sell stuff at the market, she would often keep the commodities at home. And I would often be concerned and worried about it. I would ask her, is it safe enough to keep those goods at home? And she would say, well, who needs me? I mean, this money that I earn, this is money that I worked hard for, and nobody would ever even dare to think about stealing anything from me. So that's what she was saying. But so can you estimate the savings, the income? I can't because I would like to avoid a situation where I say something that is not correct, and I just want to say something only for ticking the box. And I can say for certain only that always, well, my mother, until she suffered the trauma, until then, she was able to provide for herself, to support herself, and she was never a burden, a financial burden to me. I never had to contribute to her welfare. Even the agricultural produce, the poultry, the cheese that she would sometimes bring to me, or like a bottle of oil, she would bring that to me because she was the one who wanted to help me out. I never felt a burden. My mother was never a burden for me in terms of myself having to take care of her. But now speaking about the amount paid for the apartment. The amount paid for the apartment, tens of thousands of euros. And that's why the commission is looking into whether your mother was actually in a position as to have such a big income of tens of thousands of euros to be able to purchase the apartment. That is what the serious doubt is about. That is the matter in question. I understand you absolutely, but I would like to mention that if I ever knew that I would be part of an evaluation like this, and if I ever knew that I had to provide detailed answers like this, I would have certainly told my mother and my brother to keep thorough records of the funds that went in and out, and to keep proper records of what was earned and what was spent. But I'd say that this is quite typical of our country. Maybe I would even, I guess, provide a little bit more detail, and I will perhaps have to draw some parallels, but might not be quite ethically correct. But my mother was thinking that she reached an age where the money that she's earned during a lifetime, that she might get at a point when she would not have any need in them as money. So she decided to invest it into something, to do something about it, to provide more security for us and for herself. So I'm as open as I can when I say that I have, I had, I have now a place to live. To me, well, for me, it was not easy at all to commute between two different households, and considering my mother would also, for instance, wouldn't be able even to leave the apartment. So I had to travel to be here and there, to do different settlements, and to help her out, to support her. That's why I declare that a right of habitation. If it wasn't for that situation, I wouldn't have had anything to do with that apartment at all. All right. Is there anything else you would like to add with regards to this matter? Or maybe you have questions that you would like to raise with the members of the commission. If no questions, that we would like to move on to the next matter. Now, with regards to your brother, during the initial evaluation, in his first statement on his own responsibility, your brother stated that along with his savings, he contributed to the purchase of your mother's apartment and that he contributed 30,000 euros. In that same statement, he explained that for that purpose, he took a loan of 20,000 euros from a foreign bank, and he expressed his willingness to provide the Commission a copy of the loan agreement. At the initial evaluation, you stated that in order to clarify certain inconsistencies between his statements, your brother, for that purpose, came to Moldova in October 2022, and he issued another statement that was authenticated by a notary, a notarized statement. In that notarized statement of your brother, he stated that the amount of 30,000 euros was his cash savings from the income that he had earned working abroad, and that amount was dedicated to the purchase of the apartment. Your brother stated that that amount, the 30,000 euros, were sent to Moldova partially through international transfers and partially through parcel transporters, and partially part of that was given to your mother in cash when he would travel to Moldova on holidays. The Commission didn't identify any international bank transfer in the name of your mother from her son. In that same statement that was notarized, your brother stated that another amount of 20,000 euros he contributed with was the amount of the loan granted to him by a foreign bank on the 4th of April 2019. And that amount was dedicated for the refurbishment of the apartment in 2018. During the initial evaluation, you submitted to the Commission a loan confirmation document that indicated the purpose of the loan as purchase of a used car from a private individual. During the resumed evaluation, you state that you were not able to reach out to your brother to ask for more details about that loan, including the copy of that agreement, because he was working abroad. Now, the question is, could you please clarify for the Commission what was the purpose of the loan of 20,000 euros contracted by your brother in 2019? I would like to mention now, to start with the answer by saying that when it comes to the provision of some additional documents from my brother from Italy, well, I was not able to do that. And this was also raised by the Commission now, but that is also because certain issues arose during my evaluation. I would reproach things to him. So this shook our relationship with my brother. So we have a more tension relationship now. My brother is accusing me of giving him trouble without good reason, that I'm asking for a lot, for more, that I'm asking more than I should. So that's why we had this fallout. But he did not purchase a car, but he maybe intended to buy a car. So he's been working since 2005 in Italy, and to this day, he only uses one single vehicle, that is a BMW manufactured in 2000. He purchased that car. Well, he told me more or less, I think it was about in around 2013, 2014 that's when he bought it. And he continues to drive that car to this day. He didn't buy any other car. What is more, when he took that loan out, he said, yes, he was counting on the fact that he will have enough money, he will be able to sell the car that he was owning, that he would have something then left from that credit from that loan that he took, and that he would, for instance, buy then with all that money a newer car, but he didn't manage to do what he had in mind because his initial calculations turned out to be not quite what he needed and expected. The investments that were required to refurbish the apartment to make it more habitable, so to speak, in normal conditions for my mother. So actually, the investment had to be larger for that refurbishment. So they ended up having to spend more than they thought that they would spend. For that reason, he was not able to, he never sold the car that he already owned, that was older, and he did not buy a new car. So to this day, when I had a last discussion with him, we were very clear, but he said that to this day, he continues to work to pay that loan back, and it's the reimbursement deadline is 2025. And actually, he was also in a furlough, and he thought he would remain in Moldova when he came here. But since he realized he had those financial obligations that he had to live up to, and he wouldn't make it, he thought he went back to Italy. So he works 7 out of 7 around the clock. He is a long-haul driver in Italy, and over the last 4 or 5 years, she didn't even rent out an apartment. He said that he sleeps in the trucks. It's either in the parking place of the company that he works for. So he's trying to cut his expenses as much as he can to be able to pay up the debt that he has, because all his savings went into that investment, and he was broke. So when he took the loan, the pandemic started. There was very little work to do. There was a time when he was on furlough. He didn't have any work to do for a year. He did not have any job. So then he got a job again, and he's trying to address some financial priorities. He's also putting some blame on me, as in saying, in addition to all of his issues, I am giving him yet another headache. But we're speaking about different amounts. You said that initially your brother gave your mother through international transfers or cash, like 30,000 euros initially, and then 8 months later, after the apartment was bought, he took a 20,000 euros loan that you said now that initially that was meant, well, that ended up being spent for the apartment. But the amounts are pretty big. As regards international wire transfers, none were found by the Commission. So how can you explain about these 30,000 euros? How was that amount brought into Moldova? The 30,000 euros were not brought in a month or a year. The 30,000 amount has been accumulated and then brought into Moldova over about 5-7 years until the apartment was bought. But why did he say there were international transfers? There were none, actually. Well, that's what he told me, and he continues to say to this day that he remembers that in certain instances he has also made a few transfers. Yet another time, I asked him then to confirm, to provide, to confirm, to say what international transfer systems did he use. But then he talked to our mother, and he said a few transfers were made through Mobius Banca. I can't provide an answer as to why those transfers did not show up, why they were not detected. I don't know for certain for how long banking institutions hold on to this information, for how long they keep it. But I would like to reiterate that the people through who he transferred money, these people could also make some statements in this regard. I could find these people if the Honorable Commission thinks that that is required. But when I asked him why would he transfer money through people and through these parcel transporters, when I asked him that, he said that as he, for all those on all those working days, he was always on the move, out and about, and commercial banks didn't work on weekend days, on Saturdays and Sundays, so he didn't have the possibility to make these transfers through banks because that was more rigorous. And in addition to that, it was cheaper to do it otherwise. It was easier to do it through the parcel and passenger transporter. So For 10 euros, they would transfer over 200-300 euros. He wouldn't transfer huge amounts at a time. And when he would come to Moldova, he would bring over his savings. He would then also cover some of his expenses, and whatever was left, he would leave with the mother. All right, but initially your brother agreed with presenting the loan agreement. But later you said that you are not able to reach your brother, there is no agreement. So is there an agreement or not? Can it be provided to the commission? Or esteemed Madam Raducanu, I submitted that agreement. It is there. The loan agreement, the bank loan agreement is there. I said that I was not able to provide information, data as to how the installments were paid back, but the agreement is there. And from what I remember, the mother said that he left that with her. We don't have a loan agreement at the commission. We have an excerpt from the agreement, but these are two different things, an actual agreement and the excerpt from an agreement. These are two different things. From the excerpt, we can see the purpose of the loan, and the purpose of the loan was to buy a car. So that's exactly why we asked about it. We need to see the loan agreement to figure out the purpose of the loan, because that seems to be different than what you were saying it was meant for, such as renovation of the apartment. But the purpose that is put down there is something else, is buying a vehicle. That's why the question appeared.
I got that. Now, I would like to mention that obviously you declared the purpose of a loan generally. If I'm not mistaken, it was a loan for the amount of 20,000 euros. Of course, my brother would have never buy a car for 20,000 euros, especially since he already owned an apartment that he intended to sell it in order to renew it, because he's still driving a car that was manufactured in 2000. Okay, the commission from the border crossing records that on 8th of April 2019, 4 days after your brother contracted the 20,000 euros loan, your brother came to Moldova driving another BMW car than the one that he used to enter the country in 2018. Do you know when your brother purchased that car and what funds he used for that purchase? That car. Again, I repeat, I saw the abstracts from border crossings. I am sorry, but one time my brother was a passenger in a car, in a BMW. Another time he was the driver of it. So I don't know if that is one and the same car. Today, I submitted to the commission the technical documentation of the car that is owned by my brother since 2012, if I'm not mistaken. That's when he bought it, and it was secondhand. BMW 319, I'm not very good at that, and it was manufactured in 2000. This is the only vehicle he had, and he still has. He left it in my mother's household. The commission found that your brother entered the country in 2018 with one car, and when he crossed the border in 2019, he was in another car. The question is, do you know anything about that purchase? I'm taking a look. In 2018, if I'm not mistaken, it was May, the 5th month, my brother entered the country as a driver using BMW 349L, manufactured in 2000. If we look at the subsequent entry in 2019, it's the same vehicle. I submitted you the technical documentation of that car today. It's a different car. No, it's the same number plate. I don't know. There is a different digit. I don't know for what reason. Well, if it's a different digit, it means it's a different car. We are talking about two different cars. And then what would be the issue if he were to come as a passenger with some acquaintance of his? It wasn't about him being a passenger. He was driving that car. But they are driving thousands of kilometers. They are taking shifts. He confirmed me very definitely. He did not have any other car. Okay, I understood that. And I see that car. It is in my mother's yard in their household now because it is a car with lots of issues. So last time he left for Italy by plane. He did not drive because it is in a horrible technical condition. If necessary, could make a request to Italy to see if any sale purchase contracts were registered on my brother's name. But well, we are asking you if you know. I state with certainty that my brother did not buy any other car but that one. Okay, let's move on. In 2017, your mother suffered an accident and the apartment in Chisinau was purchased in her name in 2018. Is that correct? Yes. Is it correct that your brother started sending the 30,000 euros for the purchase of the apartment after you decided for your mother to purchase the apartment due to her health condition? No. I would like to clarify here. My brother, all the financial resources that he was earning and gathering, he was sending money to my mother before 2017. In 2018, a certain amount was already gathered, and it was with my mother. Again, this money was sent for a period of at least 5-6 years. When my mother suffered the trauma, the final decision was made that we need to contribute, we need to make sure that she can live in more or less decent conditions under my supervision. Because if that wouldn't happen, I wouldn't have my mother today. Would you like to add anything to this topic? Or maybe the members have any questions? If not, let's move on. Right of habitation and consumption expenses. According to information about your bank accounts, between 9th of January 2020 and 23rd of August 2021, that is 1 year, 5 months, you spent around 111,338 lei in the neighborhood of your mother's apartment, namely 180 cash withdrawals in total amount of 70,200 lei and 132 payments, total amount 41,138 lei at the supermarket that is located on the ground floor of the building where the apartment is located. You specified during the resumed evaluation that you spent most of your time in Chisinau and that there are fewer records of bank transactions in Hâncești where you own an apartment. Could be explained that you get to Hâncești very late in the evening after work. Could you please tell the Commission approximately how many times you spent the night at your mother's apartment in the period between January 2020 to August 2021? Of course, I cannot say, I cannot give any specific data, but I would like to mention one thing. When I was making these transactions, buying things, it did not necessarily mean that I spent the night at my mother's. That's because the apartment is on my way from the court to Hâncești. Because when they looked for a place to buy, given that I needed to make sure that I would be able to supervise in a way the way my mother lives, because she was barely leaving the apartment. We looked for an apartment that would be on my way. So these purchases do not necessarily mean that when I was coming from work, visiting my mother, going downstairs to the pharmacy. It wasn't only the supermarket, pharmacy as well. I was buying her whatever she needed. I was living with her what she needed. I was purchasing some things for me, what I needed. I made sure that my mother was okay, and very often my journey continued to my place in Hâncești. Of course, I leave work at 5, visiting my mother. I usually would get to Hâncești after 8 o'clock in the evening. Of course, I did not have the need to go shopping anymore, and I didn't have the time to do that. Moreover, that was the period of a pandemic, and the access to free circulation was very limited. I tried not to have many stops in order not to contact with people, because I knew that then I have to contact with an old person. So I wanted to protect her. I wanted to protect my mother from having to leave her house in order to meet her needs. So who paid for utilities and maintenance for the apartment? There were cases when I was paying for that. Very often I was paying for those services, especially since it was very convenient to do that from my card. I was accessing the service. I did that, and I still do that, because obviously I contribute how I can to provide for my mother. So I was doing the same payments for Hâncești, and until now, no. So both me and my son are paying for the utilities for Hâncești. There is no bookkeeping that I pay today for my mother and tomorrow she reimburses me the money. No, how I can, to the extent I can, I fulfill my civil obligation to support or to contribute to supporting my mother, who, I like to repeat, is 80 years old, is physically affected, so she has very limited physical mobility. She has great needs, including for treatment purposes, and to the extent possible, I cover these expenses too. And that is because for 2 years I'm working now on three jobs to ensure proper financial condition. My son, the same, is working night shifts in an American company, is paid appropriately, and we can afford to contribute to my mother having the bare minimum that I can afford. How can you work in 3 jobs if you are a judge? It's teaching activity. Today I have an employment contract with the National Institute of Justice for half a salary as a trainer. Moreover, I have a contract. I am accredited as an international expert with a German foundation, GIZ, and I provide teaching training services for the training of civil servants and judges in Central Asia, and I am paid by that foundation. I do that on the account of my vacations. In the last 2 years, I did not have any vacation time as all other judges do. I am taking these trips on the account of my vacation time. I am contracted officially, I pay taxes, and I can afford covering the expenses for my own. So, do I understand correctly? You are the one paying the utilities. Not always. Sometimes. Sometimes my mother gives money to my son and he pays. Sometimes it's my son, sometimes it's me. It depends. Sometimes she feels okay to go downstairs and pay for the invoices because she doesn't have to go very far. What's the present situation? Do you still travel to Hâncești? Do you live with your mother in that apartment? What's the current situation? I would like to give some details that I would not like to be public right now, because they relate to my personal life, but I will provide details because you asked me and I'm obliged to say that. So, starting in 2019, 2021, even 2022, we had a quite difficult situation in terms of my personal life.
Sorry, may I interrupt for a brief second? I think Victoria want to say the same thing. You think it would be good to go into private session now, just to give you the opportunity to answer the question?
Either that or she could provide it in writing after the hearing.
Or you could provide it in, what would you prefer? Because I do recognize indeed that there can be an issue of privacy. We would like to respect that, obviously. So would you prefer to provide the details in writing afterwards, or would you prefer that we do so in a closed session now? We can go into closed session for a few minutes. What is your preference? It's equal for us.
I understand and thank you. If you insist for me to do now, I will do that now. If you allow me to do that in writing, I will write that and submit it to you. Whichever way you say, I will do as you decide. I think it's better to have it in writing.
Given the heads I'm seeing going up and down, I think the answer is that we will be more than happy for you to provide that in writing after that. And thanks for raising this. And of course, we will fully respect that. And we can you can submit those answers in writing afterwards. That we would very much appreciate that. Okay. So Tatiana, you want to go on with another question? Yeah. Go ahead, sorry.
Would you like to add anything to this subject? I would like to only give some details about one important aspect. But again, I hope it is understood correctly. Esteemed Commission members, I was very much helped by my mother during my entire life. When my child was born, when he was 3 months old, I had to go back to work. My boy was 3 months old when I went to work, and my mother, for 3 years, stayed with my child. On Saturdays, she was going to the village and taking care of her household. So I felt, and that is not the only reason, but I care a lot for my mother, especially since I lost my father in 1995. So I tried to make everything possible so that this period of her life, she would be surrounded by my care and by the minimum help that I can provide to her as her child, that she brought up, that she educated, and she supported all her life. And I want to give it back to her. Therefore, of course, not knowing that I would happen to be in a situation where I have to prove and justify certain things, maybe I was not exemplary enough in terms of contributing or insisting for certain things to be much better kept or much better recorded. But in the situation with my brother, as my mother is, it's an entire society living through the same situation. So once more, I would like to address the national members particularly to start this, to depart from the reality of our country that is valid not only for my family, but for most of the people who at the beginning left the country and worked, not always officially employed. And then when situations changed and they became citizens with full rights in those countries where they work, so I did not know that it would be necessary ever to have these rigorous data records. That's why maybe some things are not justified enough, but I assure you, I did not hide anything. I did not underestimate or overstate anything. I tried to be as concrete as possible, and I am still the same. Thank you. Let's see, for issue 1, if we have any questions from the Commission members, please. Victoria, please.
Yes. Victoria, go ahead.
Yes, and I have a question related to when the decision was made to purchase the apartment. and I believe you stated that your mother regarded it as an investment in order to have something, a place for the future. And I believe you also said that your brother contributed funds and that it was an investment for him. Did I understand that correctly?
Fratele meu
My brother
fost de acord că
agreed
aceste sume pe
that
care el le
the
economisea
amount
și le
that he
transmitea
had
mamei mele,
saved and sent
poate
to
nu
my mother,
întotdeauna contând că o să fie toate investite într-un apartament în așa
not
măsură, pentru că
always thinking
de
that
fapt
all
se
that money would be
scumpiseră
invested into an
și
apartment, because
apartamentele
at the
erau într-o
time
creștere de preț.
apartments
A acceptat ca
prices were
aceste sume să
increasing
fie
at that time, so
investite
he
în acest
accepted
apartament.
for those
Nu
amounts to
neapărat
be
pentru
invested into the
ca el
apartment,
să
not
aibă careva
necessarily
beneficii, pentru
for
ca să
him
le
to
asigurăm
get any benefits out of that, but
această
just to make
prioritate pentru mamă.
sure
Ei
to ensure
duceau
this
și cu
priority for our
gospodărie
mother.
comună.
They
Evident
had
că
common
gospodăria
household.
din
They
satul
still do have
Carpinen
a
este
common
o
household. Of
gospodărie
course,
serioasă.
the household in
Este o
Carpinen
gospodărie
village is a
muncită.
quite serious one. It is
Aceasta
it requires a lot
îi
of
va
work,
ulterior
and
îi va rămâne fratelui meu.
subsequently that
Eu
household
vreau să-mi
will
o
be
am
left
pe
for
mama
my
mea cât mai
brother.
mult alături,
I don't
dar
want
este evident
to
că
it. I
eu nu
want
o
to
să
have my
pretund
mother for as
niciodată
long
la
as
aceste
possible,
bunuri
but
și la
I will
aceste
never
situații. Acestea sunt
claim
bunurile
anything
familiei
related to that
fratelui meu
property.
și a
That's
mamei mele.
property of a family of my brother and my mother.
And you're referring to the apartment, correct?
Și la apartament la fel, și la casă, și la apartament, tot ce este,
Including the
este a lor.
apartment, both the house and the apartment.
But
It's
why
all
is your
theirs.
and why is your brother's name not included in the title to the apartment?
Nici numele meu nu este inclus, nici
My
numele,
name is
pentru
not
că,
there
în
either.
primul rând, când s-a procurat în
I
momentul
mean, first of all, when they
apartamentul,
purchased it,
fratele
when
nici
the
nu era în
apartment was
țară.
purchased, he was not in the country.
Ca să participi și să incluzi
In
într-o
order to take
tranzacție
part, to
numele cuiva,
include
acesta
the
trebuie să
name
fie
of a person into a
participant în
transaction,
tranzacție.
that
Atunci
person
acest
has to be
apartament,
party to that
să vă zic
transaction.
sincer,
At the
a
time,
apărut așa
honestly,
foarte
um,
repede, printr-o
that happened
cunoștință
very
mi-a spus că
quickly through an acquaintance.
deci
An
este
acquaintance
un
told
apartament
me
de
that
vânzare
there is an
știind că
apartment for
mama mea era
sale,
în
knowing
căutare
that
sau
my
eu
mother was
contribuiam
looking
și
for,
eu
or
pentru a-i
I was
asigura, evident că mama
helping
era deja cu
to
puțină
help her
posibilitate de a
because
se
my mother
deplasa.
had very limited
Aceste
ability
persoane aveau
to move
nevoie de a
around at that
vinde
time.
acest
So these people
apartament cu
needed to sell
condiția
the
că ei o
apartment,
să mai rămână și o să
given
mai
that
locuiască în
they
acest
can stay
apartament,
and live in that
trebuindu-le
apartment,
banii
but they
ca să
needed the
investească
money
în altul, să
to
termine
invest
achitarea.
into
Deci
another one to
ea
finish
a
the payment.
procurat acest
So she
apartament,
purchased
dar
the apartment,
minimum încă,
but
dacă nu mă
at
greșesc eu,
least, if
4
I'm not
sau 6 luni,
mistaken,
aceste
4 or
persoane au
6
locuit
months,
acolo.
those
De aceea
people
și-a fost
continued to live in
favorabil
the
să-l
apartment.
procure
That's
cu
why it
această
was a
condiție.
favorable
Doar în
moment to purchase it
2019
at
acest
that time.
apartament s-a
So only
eliberat.
in 2019
Mama în
that apartment
2018
was
a locuit la
vacated.
mine la
In
Hâncești.
2018, my mother
A
lived with me
stat
in Hâncești.
sub
Um,
supravegherea mea în
she
casa
was
de la
under my
Hâncești.
supervision in the house in
Respectiv,
Hâncești.
în 19, când a fost
And in
eliberat
2019, when the
apartamentul,
apartment
fratele
was
a venit
vacated,
în
my
Republica
brother
Moldova cu
came to
creditul
Moldova
respectiv
with that
achiziționat.
loan
Am
that he took.
convenit că atâta
We
timp cât o să
agreed
aducă
that
apartamentul la
as long
condiții, mama o
as
să
they
continue să
bring the
locuiască la
apartment to an
mine.
appropriate
Așa
state,
și a
mom
fost.
will
După care
continue to live
deja,
with me. That's how it happened.
dar contractul s-a făcut atunci când
But the
fratele era peste
contract
hotare
was
și
signed
era
when my brother was abroad,
mama partea
and
contractului. Eu
and the mother
personal
was
am
party to
dus-o
the
cu
contract.
automobilul
I
meu la
personally
notar,
drove her
unde ea
to the
împreună cu
notary,
cumpărătorii
where
au
she
perfectat acest
and the sellers
contract pentru că ea
entered
se
into that
mișca
contract
destul de greu,
because she
deja
had
în
difficulties
baston,
moving
dar
around. She
mergea,
was using a cane
mai mult sau
to
mai
move,
puțin sigur, îi trebuia numai decât cineva să o
so
însoțească.
she
Fratele nu
needed
a putut
someone
să
to
vină
accompany her.
pentru că
My brother
veniseră
couldn't
un pic mai
be
înainte
there.
și
He
concediul îl
came a little
epuizaseră.
time before
De aia a
that,
fost
and
așa cum a fost.
his days of vacations were over. So that's why it happened how it did.
Dar cum a dus mama la notar banii?
But how did your mother take the money to the notary?
Euro, vorba de o sumă
Euros?
de
You are
euro.
talking about a
50, în jur
huge
de
amount
50
of
de mii
euros.
lei,
De euro. Cum
Uh,
mama banii
Like,
ăștia?
so,
Unde îi ținea?
how
Cum i-a
your mother
dus?
did?
Cum
Where did you?
procedura?
Where
Cum
did
a
she keep that
acești
money? How
bani
did she
erau
take the money?
banii asupra ei, de la țară am
She
luat-o
had this money. I
în
took her from the
2017,
countryside
când
in
ea a
2017
suportat acest
when
traumatism.
she
Acești bani
suffered
au
the trauma.
fost
that money was kept by her. Even when she lived with me, she kept the money, but I never asked her how money she had, how does she keep it, in what currency. So when we went to the notary, I saw that some of the money was in lei, some part was in euros. So we together with they counted, and yes, that's a normal procedure. So of course, when I took my mother in autumn 2017 from Carpinen after the trauma, after she was hospitalized, when I realized I can't leave her there for winter, she took all her necessary things, including that money. I would like to mention that in 1992-1993, my parents had a significant amount of money that they were keeping on a bank account that in a couple of months lost its value, so they couldn't buy anything for that money. Again, that's a situation that was typical for so many people over here, and ever since, banks are very well untrustworthy for elderly people. Any more questions?
Yeah.
I'm fine.
Yeah. One question that I have is that I understand that so your mother has one house in the countryside, so to say, and one apartment in Chisinau, and so she continues to go back and forward between the two places. Do I understand it correctly that normally during, let's say, summertime, she is more of the time she is in her house, and it's primarily in winter time that she is in Chisinau? Can you roughly identify which periods of the year she is at her house and what periods of the year she is in Chisinau?
Yes, thank you. So during the pandemic, my mother moved very little to her house in Carpinen because it was a pandemic and it wasn't good. So she still tried. She told us to take her there as often as possible, but I tried to limit her being in the village without supervision as much as possible. So at some moments, we could take her there, leave her in Carpinen on a Saturday or on a Friday, and then bring her back on Sunday to Chisinau. Right now, in the last period of time when the pandemic subsided, including this year when my brother came home, my mother, since April, from Easter, she went to Carpinen. She lived there all summer. She stayed there until almost to today. And then I went and took her back to Chisinau because it's already cold. She cannot provide for herself with heating of the house because the house is not provided with a gas-based heating. That's why she's back to Chisinau. And I think until springtime, when it's warm enough, she'll not go back. Of course, maybe once or twice a month, I will go there with her for her to see her household because she is worried. And that's how the situation is. I mean, in the last 2 years, 2022 and 2023, in the cold period of time, she stays in Chisinau.
All right. Thank you. I have no further questions from my side on this issue. Thank you.
Okay. Trecem la problema 2.
Then let's move to issue number 2. The Commission has serious doubts about your ethical integrity due to the role you played during the meeting of the General Assembly of Judges in 2019 that was convened as a result of the decision of the administrative panel that you're part of, and that may have created an appearance of bias, and since that event was highly publicized. If you so wish, please briefly provide some additional explanations to supplement your written response to the statement of facts and serious doubts that
Da, vă
you
mulțumesc.
submitted.
Odată în
Thank
plus
you.
menționez că
Once more,
eu
I
mi-am
would like
ales
to
să fiu
mention that
judecător. De aceea,
I
atunci
chose
când
to be
am
a
fost în
judge. So
situația de
when
a
I was
judeca
in
cauza celor
the
50 de
situation to
judecători,
try the case of
53,
those
dacă nu mă greșesc
50,
eu,
53, if I'm not
judecată către
mistaken,
Consiliul
judges
Superior a Magistraturii,
that was
nu
held to
am
the
avut de
Superior Council of
ales.
Magistracy,
Am
I
fost
had no choice.
în situația alături de
I,
colegii mei de a
together with
soluționa
my
acest litigiu
colleagues, had to
conform
solve that
reglementărilor
litigation
legale, ceea ce
according to
consider
the
că am
legal
făcut-o.
provisions,
Sunt
and I believe
absolut
we did
detașată
that.
de
I
orice
am
ce am fost situație de
absolutely
părtinire
detached and far
ce
from
ține
any
de
possible
rolul, mai
bias.
mult ca atât, această hotărâre
Moreover,
poartă puterea
that
lucrului judecat fiind
decision
menținut de prin decizia
appears the power of
Curții
res
Supreme de Justiție.
judicata
Da,
given
această
the decision of the
hotărâre
Supreme
a
Court of
trezit foarte
Justice.
multe
Yes, that
discuții și
decision
multe
raised a lot of
hotărâri,
discussion,
pentru că noi
but
prin
not the
hotărâre
decision
nu am
itself,
decis
because
decât
in
convocarea
the
adunării
decision we
generale.
only decided
Ceea
to
ce a
convene the
urmat,
General Assembly,
urmare
but
a
what
acestei
followed
adunări,
as a
a
result
fost foarte
of
mult discutat și
um,
mediatizat,
the
inclusiv
decision
în
was discussed a
societate.
lot. It was
Fără
reflected a lot,
echivoc,
covered a lot in
aveți
the media, in the
dreptate, nu pot
society,
să nu spun.
and no doubt
Dar,
I can't
odată în
deny
plus,
that.
am mai trecut
But once
peste
more,
acele
I
sondaje
went
și opinii
through
expuse
those
și nu am
surveys and
găsit
opinions that were
nici o
expressed, and I have never
trimitere la faptul că această
found
hotărâre,
any referral to
decât
the fact
așa, în
that
mai multe,
the decision,
să zicem,
except for,
situații de justiție
let's say, in
televizată,
some
dar din partea organismelor
TV
internaționale
justice
sau din partea unor
things,
autorități
but
cu
speaking
forță
of international
decizională, nu am
bodies or
găsit a se
decision-making
expune asupra
authorities, I
faptului
did
că
not see
hotărârea
any of them
judecătorească a
saying
fost
that the
ilegală.
court decision was
Poate,
illegal.
în anumite circunstanțe,
Maybe
ceea ce a
in some
urmat cu această
circumstances, what
adunare, cu
followed
retragerea
at that
mandatelor,
assembly
a
with the
fost
withdrawal of
criticat sau
mandates
a fost
was
apreciat ca
criticized or was
fiind un lucru care
appreciated
nu
as
până la
being
urmă
a
se
thing
încadra în
that
acele
was not
reglementări
entirely
legale și
falling
ține de
under the
retragerea
legal
mandatelor.
provisions
Dar,
regarding
repet,
the withdrawal of
ceea ce am
mandates.
făcut eu la
But
adunare,
again, what I
exprimând
did
în poziția,
during the
în
assembly,
mod
expressing my
prioritar,
opinion,
a pornit de la a
as a
explica
matter of
într-un
priority, I
fel sau
started
altul
from
ce
explaining in
se
one
petrece
way
și
or
care
another
este scopul
what
nostru
was going
a
on and what
judecătorilor
our
care ne-am
purpose of the
convocat.
judges
Pentru
was
că
when
după
we
ce
convened.
am emis
Because
hotărârea,
after
calitatea
we
mea de
issued the decision,
judecător
my
a,
capacity of
s-a
a
finalizat.
judge
Eu,
ended.
care a participat la judecarea cauzei. Eu mi-am asumat acea
I, having
calitate
taken
de
part in
judecător,
examining the
membru
case,
al
I
sistemului judecătoresc din
took the
Republica
position of a
Moldova,
judge, member of a judiciary
care
in Moldova,
a găsit de cuviință să se atașeze
who
acelor
found it
postulate
appropriate
din
to
declarația
stick to
Parlamentului
the
Republicii Moldova cu privire la stat
postulates from a
facturat,
declaration of the
unde era menționat
Parliament of Moldova
nemijlocit
about
rolul
Moldova as a captured
CSM-ului
state.
ca fiind
Um,
implicat în
so
acel
the
proces
role of the
de
SCM as being directly involved
lipsire a
in that
independenței
process of
sistemului judecătoresc din țară
depriving the judiciary of
și
independence,
pornind de la faptul că
and
adunarea generală
based on the
este
fact that
forumul
the
de
General
administrare
Assembly
judecătorească
is the
suprem, unde judecătorii
Supreme
pun în
Judiciary
dezbatere
Administration
cele
Forum,
mai
where
sensibile,
judges
cele mai
debate
importante
the
probleme,
most
mi-am
sensitive and
expus
important
poziția ca
topics,
judecător,
I expressed
membru
my
a
opinion
sistemului.
as a judge that is a member of a
Și
system.
aici aș vrea să fac
And
trimitere și
I would
la
like to refer
avizul Consiliului
now
Consultativ
to
al
the
Judecătorilor
comment of the
Europeni și din
uh,
2011
comment of the
și ultimul
Advisory Council of
aviz
Judges in
numărul
2018 and the
25
latest
din
one, number 25
2022,
of
unde se
2022,
menționează
where they
direct
mentioned
că judecătorii nu
directly
doar că
that
pot
judges
sensibiliza atenția asupra
are
problemelor
not
din
only
sistem,
able to draw
dar
attention
sunt
to issues in the system,
obligați să
they are
o
rather
facă
obliged to do
atunci
that
când
when
societatea trebuie
the
să cunoască
society needs
ceea
to
ce
know what
este în interiorul sistemului
happens
și este
within the
important
system,
pentru
and it is
a realiza acel
important
principiu de separare
in
a
order
puterilor
to
într-un
fulfill
stat
the
și de
principle of segregation
independența
of powers
justiției,
in a
ceea ce
state and justice
am făcut
independence,
atunci când mi-am
which
expus
I
poziția
did
față de
when I
activitatea
expressed
CSM-ului.
my
Dar
position
atunci
towards
când
the
am
activity of
judecat
the
această
SCM.
cauză,
But when I
nu
examined
m-am
the
condus
case,
de
I
niciun
did not
element de
follow
părtinire.
any
Am
element
fost
of
în
bias.
situația că
I
am
was in the
soluționat
situation
un
that I
litigiu
solved
și
a
îl consider eu că l-am
litigation, and I
soluționat
believe I
după
solved it
ruchea legii.
in
Această
line with the law.
hotărâre poartă puterea lucrului
This decision
judecat și sper
has a
eu
power
că
of res judicata,
inclusiv
and
acea
I
adunare
hope
generală
that,
a
including that,
contribuit la
General Assembly,
Faptul ca societatea
among
să
other things,
înțeleagă,
contributed to the
face
fact that the
să se
society
cunoască ce s-a
understood, or at
petrecut
least
în
knew,
sistemul
learned
judecătoresc
what
în
happened
perioada
in the judiciary in
Republica
the
Moldova a
period
fost
when
într-o
the Republic of Moldova
vulnerabilitate. Sistemul
was
judecătoresc din Republica Moldova a fost într-o
vulnerable, when the
vulnerabilitate totală.
judiciary of Moldova was in a total state of vulnerability.
Vă voi pune niște întrebări.
Fine, I will ask you a few questions, but until then,
Comisia a stabilit că la
the
27
Commission
septembrie
established on 27th of September 2019, you participated in the General Assembly of Judges that was convened on the basis of a Chisinau Court of Appeal decision issued by you. At the opening of the assembly, you publicly announced the decision adopted on the 20th of September 2019 and read out the operative part of the decision to the assembly. In addition, in your opening speech, you expressed your personal position on the state of affairs in the judiciary and the need for change. The General Assembly of Judges held in September 2019 gained widespread attention due to the unique circumstances around the event. The 2019 Assembly drew the attention of diplomatic and international legal circles, mainly because the law does not provide for the removal of judge members from a judicial self-administration body due to a loss of confidence and is a practice that contradicts European standards, as outlined in the Venice Commission's opinion on the reform of the Supreme Court of Justice, dated 14 October 2019. In paragraph 82 of that opinion, the Venice Commission, it says that the members should only be removed on disciplinary grounds and not for loss of confidence by the judges who participated in their election. The Commission cannot but stress once again the need to fully respect the Constitution. The publicity surrounding this event also related to the important legal matters, decisions, and precedents discussed during the Assembly. Do you think there is a difference between the opinions expressed by you about the issues in the judiciary and taking the leadership role at the meeting? Well, as a priority, I would like to mention that I didn't have a leadership role at the meeting. I only opened the assembly, and I would like to repeat that I did this in order to be open towards the society, to explain what was going on and what were the underlying circumstances, because the SCM, as soon as the decision was issued regarding the decision to convoke the assembly, that is, some members of the SCM, until the review was finished with the SCJ, they were trying to manipulate with the public opinion in order to reduce the value of the decision that was issued, as in that, well, trying to say that it was illegal, while also understanding how delicate the matter was for the society. So, understanding how delicate the matter was for the society, I decided to explain that the assembly was convoked on the basis of a court decision, a final court decision. It had been looked at through the second appeal procedure. But what happened next at the assembly and what followed through the vote of the participants, the votes that were cast, that it was not up to me, that was not led by me, and by no means, and I did not participate in any other way, but expressing my personal position, and that was all. I understand the fact that you referred to the fact that there has not been a precedent like that, but that was a precedent actually for Moldova. I understand that many engaged in a lot of debates about it, and there was criticism against it as well. But I would like to reiterate that I state on that position, and what the SCM of that time did between 2018 and 2017 and 2016 as well, over those years, and 2019 too, that just went beyond any limit, that crossed any line that could have been crossed, and it contributed a lot to the judiciary of Moldova to be affected in terms of its independence. your opinion contained and referred to not only, well, it was not only about the obligation of the SCM to convoke the General Assembly, but it also said what the agenda was supposed to be, as in what items were supposed to be on the agenda. And one of that was revoking the members of the SCM. And that is what led to discussions among international bodies and among diplomatic circles, that there was a court decision imposing the SCM to convoke the General Assembly with the agenda to revoke the mandates, to withdraw the mandates of the SCM members. This is what we're talking about. I understand your question. Given that we reviewed an action that carried an obligation, there were 50 judges who requested to make the convoking of the assembly obligatory, so that it was not possible for myself to get into that because the situation was deliberative. I believe that if the SCM at that assembly, if they showed up at that assembly, then this situation would have turned out differently. We convoked, but the decision stated out what the requirements of the judges were. We were not able to make changes to those requirements because according to the rules of the administrative code, the court does not have the right to change the grounds of the action initiated and cannot interfere with those grounds. Certainly, we could have a very thorough discussion about this matter, a long discussion, but I would like to reiterate that this matter was very delicate, but also very important for the judiciary of Moldova at that time. And it was perhaps for the first time that the judiciary of Moldova comprehended that it was possible for it to take an active position about what was going on in that period of time when it was declared that Moldova was a so-called captured state. It is obvious that not all of those discussions might have looked very objective, but it's specifically that by means of discussion, we can change the situation. That SCM decided not to engage in a discussion with the judges, and that's what happened then. That's what unfolded, not as a result of our decision, but as a result of the performance of that self-administration body, which was a body that was supposed to be open with the judges, with the body of judges they were representing. Another question. Do you see any difference between those activities in terms of free speech and your duties as a judge? Not to engage in conduct that could raise doubts about your impartiality in the case that had been decided on by yourself? Yes, at the General Assembly, I said not one word about the decision that was handed down. I would like to reiterate that my role as a judge ended when I left the deliberation, when I participated in the review of the situation, when the decision was pronounced. Then I manifested myself as a judge who was a member of from among the judges, and by using my right to the freedom of expression, I think that I exercised that right not just in any place but the supreme forum for judicial administration, and I exercised that right as I was able to bring forth certain issues, certain problems that have happened for the society to be aware of it. And I would like to underscore the practice of the ECHR in this field from back in 2021, Todorov versus Bulgaria, Miroslava Todorov, and Zurek versus Poland, where the court examined some situations that are very tangential to this. And it mentioned that the right to the freedom of expression, the right of a judge to the freedom of expression, to express, to address the problems and the problematic situations and issues that they see in the system, that rights shouldn't be limited, and what is more, shouldn't be penalized. I do not want to. I mean, I would like to keep myself away from the idea that these questions pursue a particular goal. I feel very certain about the impartiality of the Commission. However, insisting on this matter, on keeping asking these questions, these affect me and make me think of the fact that the judges could feel to this day intimidated and thus deterred from speaking openly about what is going on in the system. Would you like to add anything more regarding this matter? Thank you, but I think not. Any other questions from the members of the Commission?
Yeah, I have one or two questions for you. You just referred in your comments to the two decisions by the European Court of Human Rights, Turek versus Poland and Todorova versus Bulgaria. But if I look at the facts of that case, that those two cases relate to persons who had the official position of either the president of an association of judges or the spokesperson of a Superior Council of Magistracy or a similar body. That, I think, is factually a different situation than what you were at in the General Assembly of the Judges in 2019. Do you see also that distinction? Because I think for me there is a factual discrepancy here, but I would like to get your views on that as well. So please go ahead.
Da, consider eu că evident nu pot să
Yes,
fie
I think
niște
that
lucruri absolut
certainly, well, there
identice.
can't be things that are absolutely identical
Eu
in
mă
this
poziționez
instance.
pe faptul că
My position is
aceste
that
hotărâri ale Curții Europene pentru Drepturile Omului
judgments
în
of the
niciun caz nu fac
ECHR,
referire
they
că
in
acest
no
drept
way
la liberă
refer to the fact that
exprimare
the right to freedom of
acestor magistrați
expression
a
of those
fost generat
magistrates,
anume de
that was
funcțiile
generated
pe care le
specifically or
dețineau în
that had
organele
anything
de
to do with their
autoadministrare, orice judecător,
positions in
repet,
the self-administration bodies. Any judge, I would like to reiterate,
avizului
any judge,
25 din
according to the opinion
2022, are dreptul
25
la
of
libertate de
2022, any judge
exprimare.
has the right
Mai
to the freedom of
avem
expression.
o cauză contra
Also, there's
Rusiei din
another
2009.
case versus Russia
Olga
from back in 2009 that was
Krasilnikova, dacă nu greșesc, aș
Olga
putea să
Krasilnikova,
greșesc
if I'm not
numele de
mistaken. I
familie,
might be a little bit wrong with
unde
the
la
last name.
fel a
And
fost
there
sancționat un
too,
judecător
a
pentru că
judge
s-a
was
expus asupra
penalized for
anumitor
having
situații.
spoken up about
Eu
certain
vreau să fiu
situations.
înțeleasă corect.
I would like to
Nu
make sure that you get me
am
right and
depășit,
that
consider,
I did
mai
not,
ales
I
că
believe I did
până în
not
anul
exceed,
2018
especially since until
am deținut și
2018,
calitatea de
I
membru
was in
în
the position of
executivul
member
Asociației
of the
Judecătorilor și am
executive
cunoscut
of the
multe lucruri
Association
din
of Judges,
interior.
and I've seen many
Nu am
things
depășit
on the
acea
inside, and I
limită
believe I
a
did
marjei
not
de
cross the
liberă
line in
exprimare
terms of the
asupra
freedom of
lucrurilor pe
expression
general,
with
care se
regards to
petrec în
things
sistem și
going on
asupra
in the system in general,
poziției și
and with
viziunii mele cum
regards to
le-am
my
văzut și le-am executit
position, to
în
the way that
calitate
I
de
saw that happening,
judecător
to the
în
way that I
această
felt those
perioadă.
things happening
Ceea
as a
ce am
judge in that
făcut
period of
eu
time.
în
What I
alocuțiunea mea
did in my
la acea adunare
speech,
generală
through
și
my speech at the
ulterior
General
în mai
Assembly,
multe
and
ieșiri
later
televizate,
on
mi-am expus
in the number of instances that
opinia
I was on TV,
asupra
I expressed
faptului
my
cum
opinion
s-a
with regards to how,
ce
with
starea
regards to,
lucrurilor a
well,
fost
with
în
regards to the state
justiție,
of affairs
cum
in the
s-a
justice
poziționat inclusiv
system,
organul de
and
administrare,
regarding the
autoadministrare
position of the
judecătorească, adică CSM-ul,
self-administration body of
față
judges,
de
that is the SCM, its
sistemul judecătoresc
position
în această
with
perioadă.
regards to
Nu
the
am
judiciary in
avut
that period of
decât
time.
dorința ca
All
această
I
situație să
wanted
fie
is for that
înțeleasă corect de
situation to
societate
be
și să fie
correctly
cunoscută de
understood by the
societate.
society and to be known to the people.
What I was, you just mentioned that when in 2019, at that time, you had the official status of a member or a member of the board of the Association of Judges. Would that not have raised a question for you yourself when you were confronted with deciding upon the case just a week before the General Assembly, that because of your official position in that association, that might have been a reason for recusal to participate in a decision-making on that case? It's a question I would like to hear your views on that.
Această funcție am deținut-o, repet, până
Well,
în
that position I had until
2019, când am
2018,
examinat
but in
dosarul, nu mai eram
2019, when I reviewed the
membru al
case, I
executivului
was no longer a
asociației.
member
În
of the board
prezent
of the
sunt
association.
președinte al
Now I am
Consiliului
the chair
Executiv al
of
Asociației
the executive
al
board
Judecătorilor din
of
Republica
the
Moldova,
Association of Judges of
începând cu
Moldova,
anul 2023.
starting with 2023.
Atunci când am emis
But at
hotărârea,
that
nu mai
time,
aveam
when the
această
decision was
calitate, dar
pronounced,
am
I no
menționat
longer
și am făcut
had
trimitere la
that
deținerea
capacity.
acestei
But
calități,
I
că
referred and I mentioned
cunoșteam
it
anumite
now only to
situații
say
anume
that
care au fost
I
puse în dezbatere
was
în
knowledgeable
cadrul
about. I knew
Asociației
about certain
Judecătorilor atunci când
situations that were the
aveam
subject of
calitate
debates at
de
the
membru al
association back in the
executivului.
time when I was member of the executive board of the association.
All right. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Then, if that is not the case, then I think that will bring us to the end of the hearing and the questions from our side. And I would like now to give you an opportunity to make a brief closing statement to the Commission. So please go ahead.
Da, vă mulțumesc.
Thank you.
O să încerc să utilizez această
I will try
oportunitate de a mă
to use
expune pe
this
finalul
opportunity
audierilor mele.
to speak my mind
Desigur
now at
că
the end of
am
this
și
hearing.
emoții și
I
un pic și
certainly
sunt
am
și
nervous and I am a little
obosită
bit
sau extenuată în urmarea
tired,
acestui efort pe care l-am
exhausted
făcut pentru
because
a
of
fi
all the
și
effort
concretă și
that
obiectivă și
that I made
înțeleaptă.
in order to be concrete and
În
specific
același
and to
timp,
make myself
onorată
understood.
comisie, eu
Concurrently,
înțeleg,
Honorable
vreau să
Commission,
zic
I
doar
understand and I would
cât se poate
like
de succint
to
un
say
singur
as
lucru
succinctly as
foarte
I
important.
can to say one
Eu
thing that
înțeleg
is, I believe, very
importanța
important.
acestui
I
proces în care m-am
understand the
angajat.
importance of this
Eu înțeleg
process that I participate
sensibilitatea
in. I
acestor
understand
audieri și acestor
how
prestații a
delicate
noastre, a
in nature
judecătorilor
these
și a altor
hearings
membri
are and how
și altor candidați
important
care participă.
our
Dar
participation
vreau
is
odată în
as
plus
candidates in this
să atrag
process.
atenția asupra
But I would
faptului
like,
că
nevertheless, to
Republica
reiterate again
Moldova
the fact
este
that
o
the
țară
Republic
care
of Moldova
are o
is a
istorie
country
foarte
that
scurtă
has
a
a
acelei
very short
democrații, a
history.
acelei
It is a very young
situații de
democracy,
creștere economică și
even in terms of
regiunile în acestea
economic
considerente
growth. And
avem un
with
specific
this
al
in
nostru, al
mind, there
țării,
are certain
pe care
things that are
rog
very
să-l luați
typical
foarte
of
mult în
Moldova.
considerație
And
atunci când o
I
să
would like to
analizați
kindly
ceea
ask
ce
you
v-am
to keep
răspuns eu
in
astăzi.
mind these
Da,
considerations
fratele
as you
meu
think through what
lucrează
I
peste hotare.
answered
Fratele
today.
meu, pe parcursul
Yes,
la
my brother
15 ani, a
works
realizat un
abroad.
venit
Over
de
15
doar oficial
years,
de
he
circa
has
350.000
accumulated about
euro, muncind la greu
350,000
în Italia.
euros by
Eu,
working
în
hard
calitate
in
de
Italy.
un copil care, al mamei mele, care are
As a
obligația
child
să o
of my
întrețină, am
mother,
făcut tot posibilul
as a child
să
of my
contribui
mother
și eu cu
who
ceva atunci când
must
a fost
support their parents,
necesar.
I did everything that I
În
could
rest,
to show my
mai
support
vreau
when
să
that was
scot în
necessary.
evidență și acele
Additionally, I would
constatări
like
ale
to
hotărârii Curții Supreme de Justiție
highlight
și
the
a hotărârii
findings of the
Curții
Supreme Court of
Constituționale care ne
Justice and of
spun
the
că
Constitutional
ele
Court as
sunt
well,
obligatorii pentru a
setting
fi
out that they
luate
are
în considerație.
mandatory, that they
Și nu în
must
ultimul
be
rând, aș
taken
vrea
into
să
account. And last but not
vă
least, I
rog
would
foarte
like
mult
to
să am parte
ask
de un
you
tratament,
very much
să
to
zicem, absolut egal, chiar și în
make sure
comparație
that I am
cu
treated
acei
equally,
candidați care au
absolutely
fost
equally,
evaluați.
considering
Vreau să
also
scot în
in
evidență o
comparing
singură
to other
situație atunci
candidates that
când
were
un candidat
evaluated. I would
evaluat
like
a
to mention a
menționat că a
situation
primit
where a
9.000 de
candidate was
euro ca
evaluated. He said that
donație
he
de la un
received
prieten
9,000
pentru
euros as a
a-și
donation from
procura
a
un
friend
automobil.
to purchase a
Această
car.
situație nu a fost
But that
atât de minuțios
situation
verificată
wasn't looked into
și,
that thoroughly,
să zicem, sensibilizată.
and there
Eu
wasn't so much
am fost
discussion around it.
absolut deschisă,
However,
sinceră și
I
rămân a
was
fi
very
exact
open,
așa.
very
Eu
sincere,
mi-am
and I
propus să merg în
continue
CSM
being
cu
like
un
that.
judecător de
I
carieră
intend
pentru
to
care
go, I intended, I had the
această
intention to go to
calitate
the
de membru al
SCM as
CSM
a
ar
judge
fi
by
fost
career, and
o
I believed that
ascensiune în
that
carieră
capacity as a
pentru
member
ca
of the SCM would
acesta
have been
să
one step
încerce
forward in my
să contribuie
career
la redresarea
in an
situației de
attempt
a fi
to
îmbunătățită în sistem.
improve the
Eu
situation in
ceea
the
ce fac în
system.
calitate de
What I
judecător
do
zi
as
de
a
zi
judge on a
este
day-to-day
jobul
basis
meu pe care mi-l
is
fac cu
my job
absolută
that I
dedicație
do with
și pe măsura
utmost
posibilului pentru
dedication, and
absolută
as
corectitudine.
much as
Pentru
I can,
mine,
I try to be
mandatul de
as fair and correct as
membru al
possible. And
CSM
for
ar fi
me, the
fost doar
mandate
o
of member of the
opțiune
SCM
să
would
contribui
have
la
been
îmbunătățirea
only an
lucrurilor și
option, a
doar în
way to
sistemul
continue to
judecătoresc și doar
contribute to
atât.
improvements
În
in the
rest,
judiciary, and that was
nici nu
all.
știu
Other than that, I don't know if I were to look back, maybe I wouldn't have started, or maybe I wouldn't have participated in this evaluation knowing the rigors. But I would like to again invite you to appreciate, to evaluate the situation as objectively as you can. And I can't say more than I said. Not myself, not my relatives, not my family had millions. We didn't have luxurious assets. My mother and my brother, they worked towards the goal that they had, and I had some tangency with some situations. It's only the two of us, two siblings for our parents. That's everything that I wanted to say, and I thought I think I managed to and I hope I managed to make myself understood. Sorry, and that was all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And of course, the Commission will carefully look at all the materials that you have submitted and all the answers that you have provided to us today. We thank you very much for your participation in answering those questions. And the Commission will now, of course, withdraw for its deliberations. And as much as possible, we will strive at delivering a decision within a month after the date of this hearing. With that being said, I hereby declare this session almost closed.
Apologies. I would just like to clarify. Apologies for cutting you off. How much time do I have to provide the written explanation that we referred to earlier?
That is a good point. I was about to. What about if you, because it's now Thursday the 23rd, would Wednesday the 29th be possible for you to provide that clarification to us?
I will do my best to do that until Monday, because I have to go on a business trip starting Tuesday, but I think I can manage that until Monday. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that cooperation, and indeed that would be great for us to receive it on Monday. And then indeed, with this being said, I hereby declare this session closed. Thank you very much for being with us this afternoon, I think. Bye-bye.